All right, hey, before I introduce our first speaker, I want to explain the format. Designed to be a little bit interactive. So we're going to sit down and have a series of one-on-one conversations. They're 15 minutes long. 10 minutes is going to be moderated by me. 5 minutes is going to be left for Q&A. We have members from all across different sectors that have been in your position today that found their way into very real roles where they're able to make decisions and impact this mission using this skill you're working on. And so I'd encourage you to listen and have fun, but think through what you'd like to ask and be selfish. Ask questions that can help you find your next step or answer something you're curious about, okay? With that in mind, a couple questions. I know we went through who's competed before. I just wanted to get a pulse check of how many freshmen do we have in the room? Freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. What a beautiful blend. Okay, comp sci, information systems, anything else? Cyber, probably a good one to remember. Thank you guys. Rowan's got my back. Keep me honest. All right, good. Beautiful. I think we got any grad students. We got one. Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody non-tech majors?
Great question.
Psychology? Just me.
Awesome. All righty. I'm excited to introduce our first speaker today, Mr. Gabriel Pearson. Gabe's an expert in the field of cybersecurity with more than a decade to show for it, currently serving as the senior cybersecurity analyst at T. Rowe Price. Before his current role, Gabe managed the primary team responsible for responding to and coordinating cybersecurity incidences and privacy breaches for the second largest federal civilian agency in the U.S., Centers for Medicare Medicaid. Earlier this year, he competed in the Blacks in Cybersecurity CTF competition at DEF CON. His team came in third place. Even more impressive, none of them knew each other before the morning of the event. From working at a help desk job at T. Rowe Price in 2013 to today, Gabe's shown what's possible. You develop, focus on growth, take care of people along the way. Please help me welcome Mr. Gabe Pearson. Get situated. Alrighty. Not in the way. Mike's good. Good morning.
Good.
How's the morning going?
Morning. Can't complain.
Can't complain.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Again, moderated but Q&A open, and so we'll answer as many questions as we can, and we'll get the ball rolling. Gabe, you spent the majority of your career in IMT, right? Incident management, incident response.
Yes.
Sounds like. I'm curious, how did you end up there?
Kind of a fluke, actually.
Really?
I was at the help desk, and the manager who ran the incident management team at T. Rowe Price heard me on calls, liked what he heard, and brought me onto his team. And from there is kind of what started everything.
What do you think he liked? What did he hear?
Well, for one, I was just I picked things up quickly, and I wasn't afraid to kind of guide others. If I heard someone doing something wrong, or I heard someone doing something that I could give input on, I gave input, and people started coming to me. And when he heard that people started coming to me, that's when he felt like I was somebody who could actually lead an incident and lead crisis management. That's what kind of started it all.
It was the communication piece.
It was the communication piece,
yeah.
and the confidence piece at that. You know, a lot of times people are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to say what they feel, whether they're right or not. And sometimes you just have to have the confidence to actually speak up and you know, feel, you know, I guess just know what you're doing.
Makes sense. 10 years in the space, Fortune 500, financial services, healthcare. How's your perspective kind of developed or changed over the years? From maybe when you left school and walked in day one saying, I'm ready to play in this space, to today, how's it evolved?
Well, you learn, you know, I started at one company, and one company was what I knew, and then you learn moving from different place to place that there are different ways of doing things, and that there are different people. And you know, what I learned, I guess my perspective changed in the fact that you realize cybersecurity is small, very small, but also very big at the same time. So it's really a matter of one, growing your network. You know, at one point I thought, hey, if I know what to do, if I'm smart, I'll be fine. But you know, being smart is just half the battle. Building relationships, like you said earlier, is a big piece of it. And when you realize how small cybersecurity is, you realize just how important those relationships are.
What are the most pressing challenges today? So if you think about when you graduated, and we have a blend of freshman through senior, a little bit of grad school presence, but they're on that on-ramp, stepping into the space. What do you think is most important? What's top of mind for you these days? Or actually, I'll reframe it. When you're running teams, what are you looking for from that new addition to give you the sign of, man, they're going somewhere?
Let's see. What I would be looking for is, I couldn't really put it into like simple words because there are a number of things I'd be looking for. Nowadays, it's hard, especially with cybersecurity, because everybody likes to look at experience, but a lot of times experience isn't necessarily the biggest factor in whether or not someone will be successful. Again, what I said before is, one, being able to work with people is very important. Two, being confident and being willing to speak up and take initiative is a big piece as well.
I want to talk about the cyber event. Everybody know what DEFCON is? Yeah? Good. Meta CTF. Nicola's like, yeah. Huge competition. What do you feel made your team successful? So does everybody know basically everybody on their team? For the most part? Okay. So being able to find yourself on stage with a team of folks you had just met, arriving in Vegas, what do you think made the team so successful?
Honestly, we were all curious. None of us knew it. For most of us, it was like our first CTF. We just kind of wanted to see where we were at and test our skills. And we came into it with no pressure and no expectations. And I feel like that's a big part of why we were so successful. It's just that we were curious. We kept checking things we didn't know. We weren't afraid to Google a lot. And it turns out that all worked out in our favor.
How'd you prep for it? You just get on a plane, go to Vegas, and say, let's hope for the best, or was there a little bit of prep?
No, that was pretty much it.
Pretty much it, yeah. Love it. If you were to switch seats with somebody in this room, you've had an incredible ramp, right? I mean, but when you think back about those first couple years after college, is there anything you would look back and say, I wish I did this or that in order to maybe optimize where you are, or shift, or maybe learn something faster, or experience something earlier? Like, what are those first few years? Is there something you wish you placed in that part of your life?
Well, to be honest, if I was in you guys' seats, I'd probably want to be where I'm at right now. I didn't do any CTS. I didn't do any of that stuff in college. Where you guys are at right now is putting you already far ahead of a lot of people that are in cyber at the moment. So stay on this track, stay curious. That's definitely what I would say, because you guys are already making the right moves just by being here today.
Very cool. Was there anything you wanted, before I open it up to questions, give you guys a couple minutes, anything you wanted to share that was top of mind today as you think through? I know, giving you a new question, we didn't go through it.
I mean, funny enough, that was mainly what I wanted to say, was just right here. I was just telling a few people in the back, I was like, man, part of me wishes I could walk around and, get tips from you guys, because you guys probably know more than I do at this point. So, but really stay curious. Experience is still kind of king in the cybersecurity world. So if you're not doing internships, I suggest you start doing internships as soon as humanly possible, just to get that experience up. And that's really the biggest thing I could share.
Perfectly said. Questions for Gabe? Yes. And also, if you could just name and school would be fantastic.
My name's Charlie, and I go to Penn State York. How many times were you in the field working on a problem and you just couldn't figure it out?
Every day. Every day. I mean, the thing is one thing I learned about cyber too is that a lot of times you watch shows, you see movies, and it looks fun and it looks cool, and a lot of it is frustration and pain and banging your head against the wall over and over and over again. What we really do it for is for that, finally, that gotcha moment, that aha moment when you've done it and you're like, that feeling, you can't beat it. So you've got to stay persistent. I always run into problems in it, and I can't solve it. I think I can't solve it. And then I stay persistent, and eventually it clicks. So, you're going to have a lot more of those moments. So just get used to them.
Thank you.
Sure.
What other questions do we have? Great question. Yes.
My name is Rowe. I'm from Capital Tech. How rewarding and satisfying would you say your career has been in your life?
Extremely. extremely. Had you spoken to me, 10 years ago, I have no clue I'd be where I was at today. No clue. I could say that, I went from, essentially handling incidents for a top investments company to then handling incidents for one of the largest civilian government organizations in the country. I mean, you really can't top those feelings, that feeling of reward, that feeling of satisfaction that you get from being able to operate at such a high level.
Any other questions? Yes.
So my name's Noah. I'm from George Mason University. I just want to ask you, a lot of experience, or a lot of years of experience, a lot of experience doing CTFs. What skill has been the most helpful for you throughout these years, just as far as doing cybersecurity work?
I say this, and I'm not exaggerating. Google. Googling has been an amazing skill, and I say that because there's so much to learn in tech. You can get out here and you can say, all right, I can pen test with the best of them, but then you might do a CTF where now you have to do some blue team work. Funny enough, one of the biggest things about the CTF I did at DEF CON, one of the biggest point gainers for me that a lot of people weren't able to get was learning Kusto query language to actually look into some incident response. And I knew nothing about Kusto query language. I had to Google quite a bit of it, but once I got it, I was like, oh man, I can do this. So what I would really say is the skill you need is just the ability to learn and the curiosity to try and pick things up. That's really it.
I'm gonna throw one more question. Actually, yep.
What areas have you worked in cybersecurity, like malware analyzed or cybersecurity in general, and which one do you like the most?
Let's see, so incident management, that's just general incident coordination where you bring different teams together. I've worked in that. Right now I'm an incident response analyst, so we actually do a little malware analysis, we do a little bit of forensic work, and we even do some purple teaming with our red team. What would be my favorite? I'd probably say the red team work. It's just fun for me. I like to break things, so it gives me a chance to do that and get paid to do it.
Yes.
If you had control of the entire internet for a day and you wanted to maintain persistence afterwards, what would you do?
Amazing.
And I wanted to maintain persistence afterwards. Well, let's see. Now I'm trying to think about how to break that. I mean, obviously, I'd set all the passwords to password. And there we go.
Control the internet. I would make all food blogs not 17 pages long so I can just get to the recipe. That's what I would do. Beautiful. All right, one more question for Gabe. Anybody else? No? I'll ask one. Ideally, what we do creates a better life, right? It's not that we work and then make room for life. It's all something that feeds each other. How's cyber and the skill set and the mindset, how's it made and impacted the other things? So obviously we know each other a little bit. You're in Muay Thai. Like, how has it helped feed the other interests and hobbies and things that you're participating in? Or has there not been any impact?
Well, there has been an impact. Obviously, my career, I've been, been fortunate enough to be able to pursue other avenues. I would say also with cyber, the ability to, or really just the constant mental stimulation, really emphasizes the importance of downtime and relaxation. So that I would say there's always some give and take. There's always some impact in one way or another.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Gabe Pearson. I think we have some folks trickling in. Make yourself at home. See Nicola to make sure you're checked in. And we're going to keep the ball rolling. Very excited for our next speaker, Mr. Travis JT Dill. JT is a visionary, dedicated leader in the field of cybersecurity. Today, JT serves as the CEO of Cybergenic Systems and co-founder and vice president of the nonprofit CyberVets, our amazing partner here today, along with Shane Gallagher. JT's journey began as a naval cryptologic warfare officer, where he honed his skills in leading large teams of joint military and civilian personnel in cyberspace operations, covering everything from defense and exploitation to offensive domains. JT's distinguished career covers 18 years of service at the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command. Upon retiring from the Navy, he chose to continue his mission of serving our nation, focusing on training and developing our service members. Unwavering commitment revolves around providing cybersecurity training and mentorship to transitioning service members, guiding them as they make a career change into the dynamic world of cyber. So, please help me welcome Mr. JT. How are you? Good, all right? Oh, good. I know you can't go into incredible detail on the work at the NSA, given what it is, but I do think it helps, especially feeding the Q&A portion. Could you just contextualize a bit of like what your focus was, what the work was at a high level, and then I'll drive us from there?
Yeah, so when I started working with the agency, I started off kind of doing more of like signals collection type based stuff to, it was kind of a cool gradual, because in the military we switch out roles every 2-3 years, and so you were always doing something different. Sometimes I wanted to stay on a particular track, but they moved us around a lot. So I kind of like the diversity that I had throughout my career. So I started off doing collections, signals collections. Then they made me a system administrator. Then they made me I went more on the cyber defense side of the house, to intelligence, then to operations planning, to then running an actual exploitation team. And just like the military, you did almost 20 years of service in the intelligence community. They made me in charge of Navy linguists. I can't even speak English, now I'm in charge of the Navy linguists. So that's how I ended my career at the Pentagon. But also when I left the Pentagon, it was also, they would bring me in to help focus on the training side of the house for cyber operations. Why
cyber? I felt like you've experienced a lot in your life between service. You've seen many places. Boots have hit the ground in many different territories. But what about cyber caught your attention and, frankly, has kept you engaged and focused and motivated? This far into the course.
Well, that's actually a funny question. When I first joined the military, I took kind of the first job, and that job was large weapons handling, and I was search and rescue. I had a good mentor, so your question is going to lead to I had a good mentor. So I was getting ready to re-enlist after my first tour, and I had a good mentor that says, "What are you going to do when you get out of the military? Are you going to go do Baywatch or something like that?" Baywatch was a hit show in the 90s. So what are you going to do, Baywatch? Because I was search and rescue. And so he kind of wanted me to go to the technical field, so that's when I reapplied and kind of changed jobs. And it wasn't really cyber at the time, it was more communications and satellites, and then it just kind of was forming because there was this need for more dedicated cyber experience. So it kind of morphed into that, and then once you, especially at the agency, once you started becoming known for a particular niche, you were kind of set in that particular area.
A lot's developed, mentioned it with Gabe, the industry's changed, and the threat landscape is changing by the minute. How has your perspective on cyber risk, threat, how's that developed since those early days, working as a cryptologic officer through to your time in the agency and today? How has it evolved?
Rapidly, because by the time you guys leave this room right now, I don't believe in the word about modern technology, because what's modern is just going to change by the time you leave this room. The old habit of training, especially in cyber, and especially in the military, is you would go to school for 6 months to learn this one thing, and then this is after years of planning to get that incorporated as a requirement to make a training, to develop the training, you do the training, and then by the time you get out there, well, that's years old. So I think really it's being curious, staying on top of what the newer technologies are. You're going to hear some ongoing themes. Being curious and testing new stuff out. And one thing that, especially with technology, is we can't learn it all. So don't try to become an expert in everything. Be an expert in one thing. Be great at 2 things. Be good at 3 things. And know just a little bit about something, about a little bit everything else, but most important, network with somebody that knows that's those experts. But be curious. You're going to learn a lot within your college, taking certifications, taking boot camps. But where you're really going to learn is your own cyber dojo. So fail. It's all right to fail, and keep failing and failing and failing until you start learning that a little bit more. So technology changes, and it's hard to stay up with it. But as long as you focus on particular areas, that's the only advice that I like to give. Find an area you're interested in, and just drill down into that area. Don't try to learn everything. I've only met one savant, and he was at NSA, and no one's going to be that. So.
I want to talk about the word that we hear a lot in the space is qualified talent. And anybody heard the term qualified talent? No? Okay, you'll start to hear it more. Obviously.
After today.
After today, right? Yeah. But I think it matters, right? It's an important. There's 700,000 job openings today for cyber. It's really important that we have awesome, amazing people doing really important work that are excited about it, that love it, that are great at it, to safeguard the information that's in this country. Right? And whether it's healthcare data, whether it's financial information, it's really important, and that's why we're so happy you joined us today. But at the same time, as somebody that spends so much of your time in training and mentorship and developing the soft skills, interpersonal communication, relationship building, conflict and resolution through the technical, how has your definition of qualified talent changed, or qualified in general, over the last 20 years?
Man, that's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, especially when it gets to what is qualified. What does that mean? What does experience mean? We have a lot of people that have cybersecurity degrees. They have 5 years of experience, but when you go to apply, they're not hearing anything back because they want that person with 50 years of experience, 20 certifications, and 4 master's degree for that entry-level job. So that's something that needs to change, especially when you have this skills gap, but they're not looking at what folks can actually do. One of the things, and Jeremy said it, Gabe said it, you got to network. If you guys don't leave this room without meeting somebody from another team, you might see them again down the road, because again, the whole goal is to grow this. We would love to have the CTF in multiple places, multiple times. You're going to run each other because you're competing as a team right now. But what about 5 years from now when you're actually you meet up somebody on a different team? Network. I don't call them jobs, I call them opportunities. How do you get that opportunity? It's all about networking, meeting people. My goal for my cyber vets is to never have to apply and never have to interview. You have to understand, when you leave these tables and you start growing, you said apprenticeships, internships, get them now. You can start researching your freshman year. NSA, they have a great apprenticeship program. You can find it off their website, where you can do your summer interns as a freshman. They let high schoolers. They have high school internship there at NSA. Start networking now. Get to know people, because my goal is for you guys is to get your dream opportunity with never having to apply or submit a resume or interview. Because every single day, you guys are the interview. You guys are the resume. You're a walking, living embodiment of that. And if you start network in the area that you're interested in, cold call them, get on their nerves, email, hit them up on social media, go meet them. Don't be afraid to walk over to companies and start talking to them at booths at other CTFs. Take business cards, come talk to us, email us. Hey, I'm interested in this. Do you know anybody in this particular area? Utilize the folks that are offering their help. And I know everybody in this, especially up in this front, we offer our help. Call us, email us, text us. We know people. We know a lot of people. Rolodex is big. Use us. I'm going to keep beating on that. Network.
Anything else that's top of mind for you before we open up the Q&A, or anything else that maybe you wanted to talk about today?
Man, I could talk all day. So, but for the most part, be curious. Don't be afraid to fail, and talk with us, meet us, and because I've really enjoyed where this community has gone in the last 20 years. And the resources that are available to you. When I first came in, I was starting to learn cyber. It was always the person with that knowledge that always wanted to retain that knowledge and make you feel stupid or that you don't know it. So, excuse my language, we don't got time for those assholes in this environment. So this is how you're going to, by having a very powerful network, you can go far.
All right, we'll open it up to questions in 1 second. I just want to underscore that it's okay to ask for help. Asking for help is a sign of strength. It's really important to know that. It's really, really, especially early in your career. Your job is to have an idea and a vision and some idea of where the wind's blowing so you can look ahead, but it's okay to ask for help along the way. You're never going to solve everything solo. I certainly am not, JT isn't, and anybody else that you're meeting that's a couple years ahead, they ask for help. It's okay. Questions for JT? Yes. And again, welcome the name and school.
Oh, sure. Hi, my name is Daniel from Towson University. Outside of internships and jobs, especially in signals intelligence, what resources do you know that are available that aren't classified for keeping up to date with the threat landscape?
What did I say?
Doesn't have to be. Just anything that I could go to without having a security clearance and learn.
Just again, I'm gonna beat this. User networks, whatever you're interested in, go to those areas. Most of them do have internships. Most of them have resources, and just talking to the particular area that you're interested in, because resources, and that's the one thing is kind of developing your own resources and kind of figuring where those are, because the resources are so vast. You're going through a whole pool of these resources. So can't really answer your question because there's a million resources out there. So it's really focusing on what area you want to, and just like you said, Google. But whatever you're interested in, go meet those folks because they have their own resources for those particular areas.
Yes.
Do you see a specific area of cybersecurity that's like on the rise, or that's becoming like recently prominent?
Of course, I'm going to say AI. That's kind of is it a trend? Is it just kind of? I think it's on the rise. The thing about AI is, again, it can be used for good things. Of course, it could be used for bad things. Our adversaries don't give a crap about ethical means. So I would be very interested into following AI and how it can be used against us. You guys are going to be put in a position where you're going to be needing to defend our particular networks or your particular networks. Our adversaries, majority of them don't have degrees, don't have certifications, and they will use anything in a means to get in. You got to stay on top of that. So I see AI as one of the biggest threats right now, besides the individual who wants in your network. Some of our APTs out there, that's what motivates some people. I'm scared of that one person that dedicates his entire life, day, night, to getting into your network. So you have to also make you have to think like the adversary as well.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Sajid from Loyola. So what would you say to companies that don't want to devote resources to cybersecurity?
Find another company.
Sajid, did you say school or company?
Or like companies that don't have resources or like money that don't have towards cybersecurity within the organization, like how would you go about like telling them that they need to make it a priority?
By being an example and just saying, hey, I was able to build this with this. And that's the scary part. When a company is either they don't want to spend the money, there's a difference there. If they have the money, they don't want to spend it, that's an issue. To make sure that you guys will continue to get trained and continuous learning in those particular areas or the resources. But other than that, I would say then you build the resources for them and bill them.
We have room for 2 more questions. Yes.
So I'm Noah, I'm from George Mason University. I know that the public sector just in general has a lot of technologies that are several years ahead of what we currently have, just like open source or in general. Would you say that that is a true statement? And if you've worked with any of these, how have they helped like advance your personal knowledge of cybersecurity?
I kind of like what the banking sector does, because you touch somebody's money, you're not going to make money. So I like what the dedication and the resources they put towards to building that technology, because the goal for especially financial is to make more money, and you can't do that if people are taking that money. So we learned a lot from the financial sector on the technologies that are applied, because what's the first thing that most people try to hit? Money. And besides the health sector is another huge one that I'm sure Tom's going to talk about. But learn with those, and I really, this information sharing that's happened, especially in the course of these past couple of years, has gotten a lot better, extremely better compared to what it was years ago when everybody kind of kept their information. But again, financials is kind of leading that way as far as helping and sharing that information. You have information that can help others, share it, and some of that technology is part of that resource sharing. Good question, by the way.
One more. Yes.
Katie from Towson. What do you think the most underrated skill that not a lot of people have in relation to cyber?
Soft skills. Soft skills. I think you're probably think I was going to say something technical. Soft skills. Be able to communicate. It was always I would say a pleasure, because it was a little fun when we would have, for example, someone that just came back from Iraq, is infantry, and now he's doing his joint tour, and then he has someone trying to tell him exactly what happened within a particular network, and the communication is just not there. So we actually have people translating what each other's saying back and forth. But soft skills, be able to be able to communicate, network, just the overall what it takes to. You can have a lot of knowledge, but if you don't know how to apply that knowledge and share that knowledge, I think soft skills is one of the areas, because a lot of times in a technical track, that's all you learn. And I really think the communication skills back and forth, soft skills would probably be the one that is lacking.
You'll hear that a lot, soft skills. Everybody, JT Dill. All right, I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Tom Schankweiler, distinguished professional and a well-respected voice in IT and cybersecurity. Currently, Tom serves as the director of the Division of Information Systems Security for the Financial Management Systems Group at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Prior to this role, Tom served as the director of the Division of Cyber Threat and Security Operations for CMS. CMS is currently responsible for helping administer benefits for more than 160 million Americans. So it's a top target, it's critical, and a significant percentage of the people you're going to see on a day-to-day basis, whether you're going to 7-Eleven, going to school, seeing family for Thanksgiving, depends on it. And so it's incredibly important. Tom's been an integral part of CMS in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services since 2008. In October of 2008, he joined HHS Office of the Secretary as the Chief Information Security Officer. Shortly thereafter, in 2010, took on the pivotal responsibility of leading the security program for healthcare.gov, a program designed to provide and manage health insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act. If that's not enough, Gulf War veteran, a decade of service in the Air Force, and 2 beef jerky stores in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Everybody, help me welcome Mr. Tom Schankweiler. How are you? Doing all right.
I forgot to mention my lovely wife and 2 kids.
And
the
family.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you for coming all the way from Gettysburg. Hopefully
Yeah,
it's
it was
smooth drive.
fantastic to get here.
Beautiful.
Yes, beautiful drive.
So I want to kick things off, actually, you did an interview I thought that was really interesting with Toggle Mag. It was, I think, earlier this year,
Yes.
and you talked through, it was related to FedRAMP, cyber, and a bunch of different things. You shared a challenge for large agencies like CMS is not just knowing what's on your network, but knowing whom it belongs to, so that mitigation and remediation activities can be applied. You went on to share, I believe there's a long and complex road ahead, right? And so the way I interpret that in many cases is things are increasingly more challenging. The threat landscape is changing, and as a result, again, we need great people, but there needs to be a great focus because it's difficult as is. I would just love to better understand your perspective on the current state of affairs as it relates to cyber, the threat landscape, kind of jumping off that.
Absolutely. So first, Emagine IT, I just want to thank you all for having us here at Loyola for this great facility, right? Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. I got the gray beard now, so I've been around for a little bit. But the fantastic part of being where I'm at is I get to interact with different generations of people that are coming up. And you're that next generation sitting here at the tables competing. And it's just exciting to see what you guys are going to bring. When I was first brought into cybersecurity, right, there was no such concept. It was just IT, and I was an administrator and did some things before that, but I was a system administrator. And they finally asked me if I would develop some ideas, some plans about how I might protect or how I might audit the servers I was working on. And that eventually led to the idea of security controls. Is everybody familiar with security controls? All right, if not, go out to, the best set is out at NIST. Go out to NIST, look at the FISMA, or just Google security controls. And there are just families and families of controls out there. And one specific one is around pen testing. And so this Capture the Flag event is about those things. And so I encourage you to just get into all of that, right? And you're gonna find that this is an ocean, just an ocean of information, oceans of opportunities. And that's why there's this big gap today in our staffing and this big need. So we have this vacuum that we're hoping you're gonna fulfill, right? And you are learning, you're gonna bring what you bring to the table. And we talked about the curiosity a little bit, right? I would encourage you to not get discouraged, right? And what can happen is you work today, you run into problems, right? Gabriel said, every day I run into trouble. Every day I run into something that's happening, and I have to kind of work through it. So Gabe worked for me at a time, you know, there in the healthcare, and the day started out with, there was an IT problem, and I would call down to Gabe's group and say, there was a problem in such and such, I need you guys to investigate it, and I need to give an update at 12, so if you get it to me 11:30, that would be great. Pressure is on, right? They have to give me something, and as we're talking about language communication, I don't need technobabble. I need that technobabble in the technobabble world, but I need someone to take that, distill it, and bring it back to me in a human consumable language. So those soft skills are not just about how we interact with each other, but how do we communicate our ideas, right? And so that's part of the struggle, honestly, that we have, okay? You're gonna be interacting with tools and ideas, as we mentioned AI earlier, right? AI is coming. We're just on the precipice of just learning about it and how we're gonna deal with it. And federal government's coming around with ideas, acts. If you haven't been out to read the new act that's been put out by the White House, you should go read that, right? So what it means is there's a balance between understanding what's happening in the world and understanding your IT and what you bring to the table. And so when you start to talk about strategy, right, because the things that kind of keep me up at night are, what are the bad guys going to do to disrupt the business? they're going to eventually disrupt my IT, right? But they want to disrupt my business. So when we hit, anybody know what COVID-19 is? Anybody? All right, so COVID-19 hits, a couple years ago? And people were heading to the hospital, right? Do you remember all this? Everybody's heading in, everybody's sick, people are outside in tents, like it's just chaos. And what do our adversaries want to do? They want to shut our hospitals down. That's just pure evil, right? And so that's what I have to deal with on the healthcare side. And because they're disrupting their networks, all of a sudden they're back to pen and paper. And they're coming to HHS, CMS, saying, our IT is not working as great as we need to do. We really need to provide healthcare because we need people to live. So we need you to loosen all of the requirements on IT and this and that, and let us share privacy information. And we need to be able to do all these things in an emergency situation. So all the controls that we have in place to secure, they're gone. And as a cybersecurity professional, you're going, no, why is this happening? Right? But you have to figure out how to live that. You have to help to guide it. You have to get into the mix of it. Right? We saw AI coming out. Like, who's heard of spear phishing? Anybody heard of spear phishing? Just phishing in general? That kind of stuff? I saw somebody who had no experience with phishing sit down at a chat GPT, create for me a blah, 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 to target so-and-so in this voice, go. They look it over, send it, sure enough, somebody clicks. Software is installed, they hack in, they load their software, and we go. No experience. None, We saw it at DEF CON. There was 2 people that went to DEF CON. They sat down and wrote malware in 10 minutes or less. Got it out there. So how do we defend against that? It's very, very, very difficult. So I would say, learn what's going on around you with your laws, your regulations, learn your IT, and learn your business. What is the thing that your business is most concerned about? Because when you can start to connect your IT story, the weaknesses and vulnerabilities to an actual business need, that's where things get interesting. Okay, so the landscape is really about communicating with those that are going to give you the dollars, those that have the message going on. I have to go all the way up to their chief operating officer oftentimes and say, this is what's happening and this is how it can affect the business. And that's when my part of the conversation really starts. So I know the big scope after years and years and years, but at the end of the day, where I get my information from is from all of you. I have to go to all of you, make that call and say, hey, this is what I'm up against, this is what I need, and you tell me what's going on out there. So there's this thing called imposter syndrome. Do you know about that? Anybody heard about imposter syndrome? If not, Google it, write it down, look it up. Imposter syndrome is where you get to the feeling, and this is really important for students. I have a son in IT and cyber who's in college. He's finishing up his second year, going to third. And there's this thing that comes across to you that you don't feel like you are good enough. Like maybe you're trying to fake it till you make it, right? But you get to a point where you go, this is too much. It's too wide, it's too deep, the ocean's too big. I don't feel adequate. What I heard was be curious, right? What I heard is network, negotiate. If you don't have the answers, somebody else in your team does. Use that network, use those relationships that you're building to help bring it forward. And when you start to say, hey, what can I do? Hey, he's in finance. Finance has already solved that. Let me go see what they're doing. That's the landscape that we have out here. Everything is moving so fast, right? And you're gonna see today that you're gonna be working in logs, right? You're gonna Google and look in logs all day long. Logs tell you what happened already. What I need for the future, what you are going to build for us, for this next human world, is you're gonna build the AI, you're gonna build the tech that disrupts things at the moment or before the moment happens.
I want to ask one question before we open it up for.
Yeah, I know. I took the time, but I really wanted. There's a couple of key points I really wanted to get out.
It was perfect. So one question, then we are going to open up to questions. You climbed from being a network engineer to a chief information security officer.
Yeah.
If you look at data, there's 160,000 or so network engineers. There's under 500 sitting federal chief information security officers. And so, to make it simple, you've climbed from a place where there are many to a place where there are very few. And I want to understand from your vantage point, what do you feel that made you different?
Oh, wow. I would say just taking a look at the opportunities, right? I mean, back to what JT said, the opportunity portion is amazing. I've had to interview, I think, a couple times early in my career for things. But after that, it was opportunities that presented themselves. I was able to create some discussion around that, or they created this discussion, and there was an alignment. That's kind of, it really, really took off for me at the marketplace. But prior to that is when I was doing the CISO work. And for me on the government side, I wanted to be at the decision table. And what that means is, as a person who's out in, working in civil world, really, or as a contractor or vendor, you bring ideas to the table, you bring solutions, and you hope somebody buys in. I wanted to be at the side of the table. It's less money, of course, but what you get in trade for that is you get the ability to say, make a decision. And that was what was important to me. So I was able to kind of move from opportunity to opportunity, but I worked every one of those relationships. We had less than 3 years to get healthcare.gov off the ground. And we had to go into the cloud when the cloud wasn't a thing. We were mandated by law to get there. And everybody in the federal world said, you can't do that. There's no control families yet. There's no auditing. There's no this. And I said, well, then let's create it. Let's bring the people together to create it, because I have a law that tells me I have to do this. I'm stepping into that void to try to bring people together to make that happen. So I was bringing my skills, my solution, my conversations into that. So I would say build what you can and go deep. But as a hiring person, I think what you need to hear is I am looking for people that have tackled problems, that have shown that they are willing to contribute, right? I'm looking for someone that can have a little bit of a conversation with me. And I'll tell you, I thoroughly understand when I have to talk to somebody who's an introvert, right? Introverts are amazing people and they do deep, deep thinking often. And so I have learned how to distinguish kind of those things and pull different kinds of responses out from people. What you as introverts, if you are one of those people, is you need to learn how to converse and sell your ideas in simple ways, right? Everybody can be successful here. And I know very successful people that are introverts, okay? And if that's a thing you want to talk about, catch me after one of the things and we can talk about some strategies, because that is one of the most difficult things I think for on the human side to kind of deal with is that piece of it. They're just scared to speak up, or they just don't think their voice is going to be heard. It's almost like, I don't know, you guys know the McFly story? You know, I don't know if I want to sell that book. I don't know. Anyway, I'm dating myself. But what questions do you all have from the audience?
We have a couple minutes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Daniel with Towson University. As a CISO, can you dive in a little bit into what soft skills you needed to avoid being a scapegoat for issues that were out of control?
Daniel, that's why I have contractors. I put all the blame on them, buddy. No, so I hopefully pride myself a little bit on, I will stand with my people, right? So I expect them to do work and I will stand behind my decisions. I'll move things forward and I constantly challenge what's going on. For me as a CISO, it was developing really the relationships and asking a lot as to what do you need to do to be successful? And Fed moves very, very slow at times, but I would work hard to get them the tools they need, the training they need, the opportunities they need. And what I asked for in response was, if I make that happen, will you stick with me? Will you work through these problems, right? We have, in some of the companies that I've worked with and for, they stayed a long time and they just kept working out the problems. And they were happy to pick my brain about what I saw next. And they were excited for the idea that I would come to the table and say, what are you guys hearing? What are you seeing? And I would go to DEF CON and these other places and just be wowed by the things that are coming. But I wasn't the guy who brought back and said, I saw 10 new cool things we're going to implement in the wall. I did not do that. But it's understanding the language. And for me, I need to be like a 1/4 inch deep on all topics and have a general understanding and be able to say, that's a BS flag if I ever saw one, and be able to understand it and wave it. I am no longer deep in any subjects because of where I sit. But I know you all are deep, and you all are what keeps all of this going.
What other questions do we have? Yes, in the front.
What skills do you think help you the most to become a CISO, and how long did it take you? Because I know for some people it takes them like years, but I also know that other people literally started doing it after they graduated. So what skills do you think are most helpful and useful?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's kind of like, what skills are most helpful to reach CISO? I'll say this in the beginning. CISO is a title. It's a great title to hold, but it's a title at the end of the day.
We couldn't hear. Can you have a repeat question?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I was repeating the question. So the question was, what skills do you need to kind of make it up to be a CISO? And so, I think you need the ability, skill-wise, is just kind of be well-rounded and have good communication skills. For me, the CISO opportunity fell in my lap, and so I took it. There was somebody that was retiring, and they were kind of recruiting, if you will, somebody into that slot. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I stepped into it. I had an interview, but that was more of a formality than than an open competition, if you will. So the skills, I think, at the end of the day, you have to decide if that's a position you want to hold, and if it is, then you're going to have to potentially move around companies to find out where you want to go. There are CISO positions open all over the place. It's just getting that 3 to 5 years experience and going in and doing it and having the confidence to say, I think I can do this job. So if a CISO title is what you're after, you have to fight for that title. You're gonna have to go find jobs, see what the requirements are, and go for it. In the meantime, just continue to build your own skill set, do the things we're talking about, network. But I would say making that your pinnacle to get to that role, I'm not sure, like I think it's a worthy goal, but don't make that become an identity, right? I guess is the best way to say that, because it takes everybody's contribution, right? I could be the best CISO, or I can also fail as a CISO very quickly if something goes bad in my network, which I really have no control over at the end of the day, right? I'm empowering everybody else to do their jobs, and hopefully things go well. If I have a bad day, it could be a very bad day for me, because I'm the one that's ultimately holding the accountability flag. Where many of you are not holding accountability, you're holding maybe a responsibility, a consultant role, or an individual contributor role.
We have time for one more question. I guess we gotta fight it out. We're gonna go to the back, if that's okay. Yes?
Hi, this is G from Loyola. I just wanted to ask how the space for small businesses and startups is in those contracts with the federal government. Like, I know probably work with the big government contractors, but is there a space for small businesses?
Okay, so questions about small business. So what's your question, sir? I'll see if I can nail them both in here.
My question was, you emphasize a lot of soft skills and being able to translate that technical jargon into normal human speak. I was wondering if you had any sort of like tips or tricks to kind of help with that, or help with that process, being able to translate those like very hard technical things, especially if you've just Googled it, and
Right.
you can actually like speak on it.
Okay.
I don't know if you
Yeah, no, I can find a way to merge them together. I'll be much more simple, because I know we're just about out of time. So in the back there, so federal government has lots of opportunities. There's actually a whole program for small business, and we've got some great folks right here in the cybervet.org, right? cybervet.org. So I had an opportunity to actually launch cybervet.org, not really itself, but the original concepts for some of those ideas and thoughts. Myself and a couple of other people got together, really wanted to offer this training to veterans. We ended up meeting these great folks that came in, delivered a fantastic program, and now it's actually spun off into its own small business, right? So they've seen the entire organic life cycle. I would definitely pick their brains on that. But if you go to Small Business Administration, SBA, you'll find there's just a ton of information for small businesses and how to get into it. And there's space specifically carved out for small business, women-owned, veteran-owned, on and on and on. HUD facilities, all those things. In regards to your question about how to make things simple, is I will kind of talk about my day a little bit, or things that I'm learning about, with anybody that will listen that's not in cyber. So I'll be like, hey, this is my day. I had this kind of thing happen, and then if they glaze over, I realize I've lost them. If they ask questions, then I kind of go into it. But I start very simple, and I also like to use stories. And so especially when I'm talking to senior executives, I'll say, well, we had this event today. We think it's going to impact this particular program, right? I'm worried that it's going to potentially shut it down for a day or two, or I'm going to make a recommendation that we actually turn off the service for 24 hours to allow our people to check some things. And if everything goes well, we'll get it right back online. But if we don't, my concern is that this could spread to other programs, right? Well, how confident are you? Well, from what I'm seeing, I'm pretty high confident, and so if I'm making a recommendation to shut it down, I'm pretty confident. Okay, I'm going to go with your recommendation. You're the expert. Let's shut it down. Or they're going to say to me, yeah, there's no way you're shutting that down, right? And I go, well, okay. Can I mitigate it by doing something else? Now, I've probably come out with my plan A, B, and C before I sat down to have that conversation. But I'm really, unless they want to dive deep into the technology and what's happening and who the actor is that's attacking us, I typically don't go there. But I'll relate it back to things people know. So if it is, hey, did you ever get friended by somebody on social media that you never knew, but looks really, really cool to get to know? Yeah, that might be, somebody who's trying to get to know you for who knows what reasons, right? Then they want to share things with you. Or is it weird that, I just happened to walk by Lowe's and boop, like an ad pops up for Lowe's, right? How does that happen, right? And then people go, yeah, how does that happen? And then you sit down and try to explain things to them. So it's about having human-oriented conversations with people that are not part of your community and just practicing it. That's my best advice. And there's some good books on it as well. I can recommend a couple, but I won't do that in a public setting.
Mr. Tom Schankweiler, thank you, sir. Officer for the United States Army.
Whoa.
Thank you. Major Krantz's journey in the military began in 2001 as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. You seen the movie Hurt Locker? It's exactly what it was. After 7 years as an EODT, he transitioned and became a signal officer, which served as the catalyst for his passion and enthusiasm for cybersecurity. Despite his seniority today as a cyber operations officer, Major Krantz is adamant about staying hands-on, spending most of his time hitting the keys, supporting the mission by gaining access to critical information, enabling early warnings to allies, and ensuring readiness to respond to adversaries. During his 24-year career, he played a pivotal role as a cybersecurity educator at West Point, helping to create cybersecurity courses and even coach the cyber team. As coach, took the cyber team to the President's Cup, where they were able to achieve one, if not more than one, top 5 finishes. So with that in mind, please help me welcome Major Michael Krantz. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you? How's everything?
I'm doing good. I know I'm all that's standing between you and CTF, right? So I'll try to be brief.
I mentioned in the intro, 7 years playing Hurt Locker, incredible. Okay, as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. Then you transitioned into signal, and it served as the catalyst to cyber. What was it when you made that transition that caught your attention and has really served as that spark into this interest that's really driven another decade and a half of deep interest? And I mean, if you're spending 8 to 12 hours a day just hitting the keys, hacking in, breaking, you gotta love it. What was that spark?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I got to hang out a little bit with the Penn State team, right? I know they're from New York, but I grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, the home of Penn State main campus, and I was what I would call a serial underachiever, right? Which really just means I was lazy. So I applied to Penn State, right? I'm from Penn State College High School. I'm a mile from the main campus, and I get my letter in the mail, and I get accepted to Penn State Altoona. Right, so they actually had a team member that was supposed to be coming here, so I hope if he's here, he didn't take that personally. But that was like an hour commute for me to and all my friends and stuff, and so that was really the catalyst for me to join the Army, right? I knew that I was not utilizing my potential. I was lazy. It would help me build that work ethic. I would get to travel, right, and I get to do really cool jobs, and so I would get to blow stuff up every day, and that's where I started to want to be. In the bomb squad, that EOD technician, right? And so one of the things I really liked about it was a deeply technical job, right? A lot of the same things you guys are going to be doing in the CTF, you'll see that, right? This idea, a black box, like I would show up on an IED and, right, you would have to have enough background ahead of time to kind of guess how that would work inside, to be able to rely on yourself to solve that problem. It was one of those things that you really couldn't communicate at the time with a lot of other people. You can't use mics and things because those signals could potentially trigger what's going on there, right? And so it was really you and that problem in front of you, right? And now, and I found as I was going through school, cybersecurity in a lot of sense to be the same. I mean, an example I'll give you, I was just this past month, right? I'm 5 hop deep, right? I'm preparing to execute a mission plan. We're doing a thing, and all of a sudden an admin appears, right? You can see, so what I do, just to clarify, I do offensive cybersecurity operations, right, against our adversaries, and so you know, I'm there, and so what do I do at this point in time, right? I'm sitting there, I see an ad on a box. Is this where you just, you know, like pop, smoke, and run, right? Am I just going to stay and to get out of there because something we have done has been caught? Am I going to stay and observe what they are doing, or do I continue the mission, right, and potentially risk, you know, the tools we're using, the infrastructure, the method we got to get there, and like all of these things. And so I really like that, like, intense like moment where I have to rely on myself because I don't have time to just say, hey, pause, right? Let me go ask someone what to do in this moment, right? So I think that's what I find really similar, and just the idea of like even that, like me telling you that that's my job, right? You know, it's really cool. I don't think anywhere else that I can do that legally, right? And so to go from blowing stuff up all the time in Afghanistan to be doing that on a keyboard on a daily basis is pretty awesome.
Incredible. A lot has changed since those days in Afghanistan. Today you spend your time deep in hacking and trying to break in. And how is your view on the state of cyber, the state of the threat landscape? There's a lot, I mean, more of your personal point of view, there's a lot going on in the Army as well. Moving to cloud is a great priority. There's a lot coming out of ECMA. There's a significant focus to make this next transition to cloud an advantage for us as a warfighter, and obviously an integral role in it. But I'm just curious from your point of view, how have you seen it develop from your vantage point, and how does that influence kind of your view on things today?
Yeah, so this is a great question in terms of, you know, especially our adversaries and their view and the importance of cybersecurity, right? You know, coming out of really like World War II, right? It came kind of the have and have-nots in terms of having this asymmetric advantage. Anyone know what that asymmetric advantage we had coming out of World War II was? Anyone would gather a guess? Industry. Right? Nuclear weapons, right? You know, and it really became like all the people who either had a nuke in terms of the political power and the ability to like project that power, and those who didn't. And we've kind of carried that advantage as that group has grown a little bit, right? And then you see things like conventional warfare, you know, Desert Storm in the 90s. The Army goes against, you know, a top 5 other nation, right? And they, you know, annihilate them in 3 days without really any significant casualties, right? And so now when you look at our adversaries, it's kind of this idea that they know using conventional warfare that that's not going to work. They don't have the same money, you know, the time to build that equipment and stuff. And so that's kind of where the shift has moved since then to this idea of cybersecurity, right? Our adversaries know that, you know, it's something that they don't need to have a lot of money invested in building up, you know, the Apache, right? Or developing the M1 Abrams, or, you know, the Tomahawk missile, right? All of these things that are like years-long projects, right? They can do it through, you know, just a person on a keyboard, despite restrictions and economic things. And so it's really changed the landscape of like how they are able to impact. And so I think that cybersecurity really, you know, some people say it might be the next, you know, field in terms of that asymmetric advantage or not, but I mean, it's really where the war is fight. The other thing is that it is, you know, less than direct conflict, right? We're in conflict with our adversaries every day, despite the fact that we are not like espoused at war, because, you know, that's what you're able to do. And so you're constantly able to push that boundary. And that's where events like this are, I think, super important, right? We talk about this huge need for cybersecurity talent out there to help, you know, protect our values, what this nation stands for. And so it's just so awesome to see so many young people in here doing something that, you know, CTFs are amazing at. I love.
2 questions about hacking, and then I want to talk about the experience. Top 5 of the President's Cup is significant, and so I do want to talk about that before we run out. First being, what do you feel separates a good hacker from a great hacker?
I mean, I think that's an interesting. I mean, we touched on some of the things that are super important, right? Curiosity, and I think in another way is the fact that continual learning. Right, like I spent as much time continuing to get certifications, to go through training, despite the fact that, you know, I've been doing this now for a decade. And so every day I run into a situation, you know, that I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do and need to learn something new. And I think every single speaker you've talked to has touched on the idea that you are continually learning how Google, right? The idea of being able to research, that independent drive to do things. I think a really important thing for me also is passion, right? Like, this is not a job that you can do for just money, right? If that's why you're here, and you can see, I mean, you wouldn't be here on a Saturday for a CTF if you were in this for just money, right? Like, this is a thing, and that's one of the reasons I still do it, is that, like, this job is awesome, right? And the Venn diagram of things that you need is you need a job that you like, right? You know, if you do a job you enjoy, you never work a day, or whatever that cliche is, right? You need a job, right, that can you know, make a living enough that you can protect and have your family, right? And for me, I think the third part was always just having a purpose, right? And so I feel like I'm doing something that is bettering mankind every day. You know, I'm doing something that I really love and enjoy, and I'm able to take care of my family, right? So I don't know where we started, but that's where I got.
Perfect. We were talking about good to great hacking.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one thing I want to talk about, so a mutual friend of several of ours, Matt Kurz, talked about on our podcast. He supported with managing incident response. And one thing that we talk so focused on the technical, right? We talk about soft skills, communication. One of the things he shared that I thought was fantastic, and I think is going to lead into the question being stamina. Right? Being able to do these things for 8 to 10 hours a day, or to manage that incidence when you really have to run, not a sprint for a 30-minute session or an 8-hour day, but you have to have the stamina to follow through on something. And sometimes it's difficult. I'm curious from your standpoint, in the frame of that good to great hacking and being effective in that offensive scheme, what role does a mental and emotional stamina play for you?
That's an interesting question. I do, you know, burnout is a real thing, right? And so, you know, it's very important that, again, I think, you know, making it be something that you enjoy helps with that, right? We talked about the social aspect of it, right? If it's you by yourself doing this, it is hard. But when you're sitting there with a couple teammates next to you, right, that are also grinding, you know, working through that struggle, you have that, you know, we say a rubber ducky, but that person to talk through your problem with, that social connection, I think that really, really helps. You know, it's really nice to have a win every now and then while you're working through that, right? Like, you know, so maybe you're struggling on a hard challenge, right? Move over to that easy one, you know, get that little endorphins, right? And that positivity, and then go back. But it is a difficult thing in this space, you know, not getting stressed out, that mental thing. And that's really where having a mentor, a person, you know, having other peers, that social connection, you try to do it by yourself, right? A lot of people do get burned out, so.
Love it. I want to talk about West Point Cyber Team. Okay. And so you've coached that team for how many years?
About 6 now.
About 6, yeah. Incredible. So what do you feel would you attribute to the success? I mean, was it the preparation? Was it just the talent? I mean, there's so many factors involved, but again, the prestige. I mean, President's Cup's a serious competition.
Right. And so we've done, you know, a lot. It's interesting just looking around here, right? You know, I saw someone next to me on the screen on Pico CTF, right? You know, working with For All Secure, awesome things. We saw some Cyber Patriots, CCDC. Like, there's a lot of these great competitions out there. And so what makes you successful? I think, you know, certainly perseverance, right? I think that is one of the #1 things that you have, is this idea of being able to, like, you know, continue to work through things. You're going to get frustrated. I think everyone has mentioned that here. You know, continual learners. I will say that some of the best students that I've coached are not the ones that you would think, but they just love that space, and they are constantly learning, building this into things like their hobbies they do on the outside. And just so that's where they grow from, is just they continually do this. You just, you know, to be an expert in anything, you got to put in time, right? And this is another thing that you're just going to have to put in time. It's nice to work with some talented people, right? So that's definitely helped with success. And the idea that on a team, you really have to have people, and it's been mentioned, know their own space, right? Like everyone cannot be into web exploitation, right? We've got to have web exploiters. We've got to have reverse engineers. We've got to have people that are doing forensics, right? And we got to have that coder who can help us with the script and help us build our infrastructure, right? You know, so we got to have all of these different pieces, and your sum of your parts is better. And so that's really important in having a successful team.
One question, and then we're coming to the floor for Q&A. Anything that's top of mind for you these days that you wanted to share coming here? Anything top of mind?
Honestly, no. I just, I really, I think I already hit on it with the thing. Is I just, you guys are way ahead of where I was at this place. I feel like at a point in my career that I've been relatively successful, and so I think it's very important that you just stay passionate. If you feel that passion, there are so many different spaces in cyber, right? And so go find a new space, right? Try something different. The ability to move around from being an educator to a doer, back to an educator, like that revitalizes me. Being around youth like you that is really excited about it, and so just make those connections, move around, and I just look forward to seeing what you all get to do in the next decade.
Beautiful. Questions? Yes.
My name's Charlie. I'm from Penn State, York. I was wondering what scares you the most besides AI moving forward with the threat landscape?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question. I mean, what scares me the most on a daily basis is that cyber is very different, particularly in what I do, from conventional warfare, in the idea that once you put something out there, it's very hard to control what happens to that. We try our best and whatnot, and so data, as you mentioned, really the underlying part of AI is very worrisome in the sense of I'm not just worried about the adversary. I'm worried about all of the sensors and all of the part and what they are doing. I'm part of that pattern of life, right? Am I standing out because this is not the normal way a connection should go between these devices? But I also always worry about the idea that there are things that you just can never get back, right, once they're out there. And you've seen that happen in various spaces where people design something, a security research for a point, and then it ends up getting used for some malicious reason to an extent. And so that worries me a lot as well.
Thank you. I think we had from UMBC question.
I'm Will from UMBC. What's your daily routine like? Is it a lot of hands-on keyboard? Is it a lot of meetings or?
Yeah, and so I'm very fortunate. I'm a relatively senior, but I do spend the 40% of my time probably easily direct on keyboard. And so kind of the way it is you could think of it as kind of like the pilot analogy. I normally have a person with me who is an analyst who kind of builds the flight plan, and so I do a little research into that flight plan to make sure what I'm doing, and they'll be there to help me, but I'm the person who then drives the plane to some extent. I do a lot of mentoring and training, and so I'll probably do 2 to 3 8-hour missions a week where I'm at. The other time is just prepping for those missions, or maybe it's a light week. It's working with the junior people, giving them hands-on keyboard and observing them to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So just a lot of mentoring and quite honestly a lot of time on keyboard.
Yes.
Hi, Daniel from Towson University. This is about asking you the first question that I asked originally, but your question, when you're doing anything in cyber operations, how often do you find yourself attacking the same target as a kid playing war games in his bedroom?
Yeah, I don't think that really happens very often. So, yeah, sorry. Right.
Yes.
I mean, what we do, and it's very clear, right, is that there are very specific adversaries, right, in places that we are going against, and it's not something. A lot of that is just commercial or Hollywoodized, right? So it's not really where we end up on a daily basis.
We're going to go to the back first and then to the right.
So can you describe a little bit about what you do for offensive cybersecurity? So I'm thinking like you're writing exploits and stuff.
Yeah, and so there's a whole lot of it, right? And so, I mean, there's many different career fields, right? I'm actually a developer as well, and so they're the ones who build things like, you know, take your normal POC, right? You know, something that gets dropped recently, and we've had several good privilege escalation ones, you know, in the past couple months or whatnot, and then like, you know, just wraps that a little bit to make it more successful or more reliable, right? To building whatever framework. I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with frameworks from Cobalt Strike to Metasploit to, you know, PowerShell Empire. I mean, like, you know, it's all the same general concept, right? You know, then there's a person who like researches like the best way to move around and like what exploits to use. You know, that's generally what our analysts do, and they're more understanding of. And then you're actually the one who then utilizes the tool, right, to move around and, you know, troubleshoots when it goes wrong, which it inevitably does. You know, in charge of, you know, once you're in a device or whatever, making sure that device is clear, right? So I will say from an offensive perspective, right, you get to move around a lot, but there's such a big like binning. You say blue team and red team, right? I would say that I do, you know, even as a primary red teamer, I do, you know, 75% blue team, right? The idea of looking at my space, you know, seeing who else has been there, right? Making sure that there's no, you know, antivirus or something like that might be tripping me up, or someone else isn't even watching what I'm doing. I mean, those are, you know, there's no malware there doing a thing. Like, those are things that you would consider, I think, traditionally blue team, but that's a big part of my job as well.
Room for one, maybe two. Yes.
What does your success rate look like, and have you ever discovered any
I mean, so again, I am using things like there have certainly been spaces, right, and things, but I'm not a developer, right, and so there's all like that's not what I do now, and so but there are people out there that craft those things, right, and there's a whole process where when that's developed, where, you know, adjudication of the risk, right, you know, letting people. There's a lot of public disclosure that happens, right? When that is, even when they define 0 days, right? Is it to let those companies know so they can fix them to protect people as well? But I'm primarily past that point where it has been like, you know, mostly from has been turned into a tool already, and then just the utilizer of that.
One more question. Any takers? Going once. All right.
So,
yes.
Do you find the skill set for offensive versus defensive is different, or do you find people mostly enter the offensive side after spending time on the defensive side, or red, blue, whatever terminology you like?
Yeah, and so I think, right, we see that here today, right? That the overlap between offensive and defensive techniques is, you know, as I said, what it's been is probably like 80%. You know, there's very like, you know, maybe understanding the frameworks or whatever is like a solely red thing, and you know, there's some like the ability to write queries in Splunk or whatever, right, and like your search engine maybe. But the rest of it, the core concepts, understanding the networking and all of that is the same. What's really cool and what is awesome about is that just the red team is just more interesting, and people get like, you know, you have things like capture the flag, right, and you have this idea that I'm breaking thing, and so it just gives more of that external motivation to people to learn those same techniques, right, and you can like fool them into doing it, whereas I think a lot of times like the blue side exercises are just you know, not as sexy, right? And so you're learning the exact same skills. It doesn't matter if you say you're a blue team or a red team, or you're just a cybersecurity professional. And feel free, like when you like, and I really feel that if you come from one mindset and switch to the other, you're gonna be like a real expert at the other side, because you know how the one side thinks, right? You kind of have thought about that, and that a big part of it is also the mindset, right? So there's really not that big of a difference in my opinion.
Everybody, Major Michael Crench, thank you very much.